All right, today is the day and we are back in the studio taking a look today at building an adapter to go from our Toyota 1JZ to the GM 4L65E transmission. Now that jump is going to take a little bit of work because the torque converter on that transmission is massive and the bolt patterns of course are completely different. So this is what we have come up with. This here is our bell housing adapter. It has bolt patterns for the JZ on one side, bolt patterns for the 4L transmission on this side, and spacing is set up to accommodate that torque converter. Anyway, this is the project you're going to be looking at today, so let's go take a look and see how we put this thing together. Well, this of course is the bell adapter off of the 4L65E Corvette C5 transmission. Now this bell adapter on here is made in two pieces. This is the back half. We're going to take that off and use that to gain our bolt pattern. So what we need to do is we need to go from this bolt pattern off of the JZ engine. This is the bell housing from the original transmission off of the JZ engine. So what we've done is just taken some grid paper, laid it off so that we can use that grid to find the location of those holes and center off of that. Now the next thing we need to do is we have this pattern that we need to find the location of the holes and the shape of this adapter, which is off of the 4L65E transmission. So basically, we're trying to go from this to this. Once we get the holes located, then we'll input that into the AutoCAD and print that up and do a test run off of a plotted print from the AutoCAD version to check the location of the holes. Once those are verified, then we can send it to the water jet cutter. And here is that first plotted version. We're going to give it a trial fit. We know that this engine mount plate that I've created matches up with the bolt holes. So we're going to just put it on there and see if the bolts themselves go through. But once I got it put onto the plate, I noticed that no, the alignment is not any good. Just in case anybody's wondering why I don't show mistakes, because they take so much time out of a video. But once I finally got this template right, printed and ready to go to the water jet cutter, you're missing out on all the mistakes when the holes did not line up. All those iterations. Come to find out that all these holes by Toyota did not make alignment with a concentric ring around the center. They are probably bumped here and there just a fraction to adjust for thickness of the metal and some kind of rules they had for their casting. But anyway, after I dropped the assumption that they might be in some kind of a arranged pattern, I was able to finally get them lined up. And sent that off to the water jet cutter. Got the pieces back here. You also notice this big piece of tubing. That's going to be our center section. So we need to take that tubing out and cut it down to the right width. Came in a 1 foot section. I only need about 5 inches. Going to just rough cut that out with a skill saw. Always kind of a dangerous proposition with carbide blades catching things and making them go, especially a round item like this. So I've got a piece of tubing through it with a friend standing on that so that I can take the weight off and rotate it to get it cut. Once we cut that off, he also helped me step out to the shop and run that through the milling machine so we can get the two surfaces exactly parallel. Now this tube is also coming too long. It also was the wrong diameter. The closest I could get was a 12-inch piece of tubing, but I needed actually 13 and about 13 3/8. So we're just going to split it. Now this 6061 alloy is so tough that I took a hydraulic jack to get the spacing spread apart. Put a piece of material in there to block it open. Hold that thing in position while I take it in and also give it a trial fit. Diameter is beautifully fitting. But the problem we're going to have is that our holes in the flange are going to be blocked by this piece of tubing. So we're going to have to take a notch out of the tubing so that we can get our wrenches in and access those bolt heads. While I was laying this out in AutoCAD, I also added 3 extra holes in the flange so that I could put some extra bolts in to hold the whole assembly together while we're doing this fitting, cutting, welding. But the main thing that's going to align this whole thing up is that hole in the center. Now that's going to be the most critical thing that we need in the aligning this, is we want that spline from the transmission to line up perfectly with the crankshaft. So between these 3 extra bolts, that's center alignment, filling these plates with a part that holds everything together, going to be all the key to keeping this thing lined up. When that thing's lined up, mark the rest of that tubing where their bolt access notches are going to go. Then we'll have to take it all back apart, do some machining again. Just drill some pilot holes, enlarge those pilot holes to about 1 inch diameter, and to cut that out with a skill saw with a little tab between those holes in the edge of the tubing. Once I get all those cut out, take a die grinder and clean things up. Go ahead and also put a chamfer around this piece of tubing so that I can get a good penetration weld. Back to the bench for a final fit together before we take it out and weld it. Make sure everything is perfectly aligned. Of course, the key in this alignment is that centerpiece. Now, if the transmission was rotated a couple of degrees, it probably wouldn't cause any problems. But the center shafts being out of alignment would probably be a disaster. So that key element is that pipe through the middle, holding that alignment. Nice tight fit in that pipe, keeps it there. As you see here, I can now rotate my center tube to line up with my bolt holes. I've also got a mark on there to make sure it lined up good. Once that was bolted together well, take it out and start tack welding it so that nothing will move. Being a little gentle with it so nothing bumps out of place, but once these tack welds are in, no worries. Now tack welded on one side of that tube, but once I got around to this edge, there was about 1/8 of an inch that it needed to move out, so I had to put a little fight into it to get that 1/8 of an inch. Like I said, this 6061 and this 1/4 inch tube was pretty tough. Once I got it moved out, little 1/4 inch keyway slid in there, keep it in position while I finish tack welding it, going on to the final welds. I've got this spool gun that is always giving me problems, but I got it adjusted, I think, pretty good to get me good welds, good penetration. The only thing was, I think my argon flows off, so I get a little bit of oxidation and a little ash buildup. Go ahead and weld this thing. Now that notch that we had to open up that tubing, of course, you just bent a piece of plate to fill that in. And once the outside's all welded together, it's a matter of cutting the tabs on these center plates. And then the whole system's going to come apart. Of course, it's now held with the weld, so the tubing in the middle, the plates can all come apart. And once we get these plates out of the way, we have access to the interior of this whole project. So now that we got the interior open, we can go ahead and weld all the seams on the insides as well. Like I said, you can see that gap in that tubing. We've got a plate over it. Go ahead and weld all those inside seams. You'll notice also I got a few bracing on this thing. That's pretty much the whole thing. And take it out, trial fit onto the engine, and it seems to fit beautifully. And that's what we were after. So there you have the adapter plate. That's going to allow us to bolt our transmission on there. Sorry I couldn't put that on this video, waiting for some bolts to get shipped to me. But we will be able to do that, and I'll show you that. Just a quick cover up when we do monthly tour videos. As we move forward on the drivetrain, I guess the real big project is coming up, and that's going to be our one-to-one transfer case that we're going to have to build from scratch. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and come back and see us in the future. Thanks for watching.